recording it in the way that we're going to do this, we will be able to then transfer it and send it out via YouTube much easier than we want the ones that we did for the kickoff that Kevin has spent countless hours on trying to transfer those into some sort of audio type that we can actually send out as well, but that has just taken so much more time. You won't hear me yammer on for much longer. I have one slide, and then Shantae has all the rest of the presentation, I promise. I just wanted to kind of throw a couple things out there in the beginning and talk about a little bit of history. The first is why I think mentoring and this mentoring component is so important. So for those of you who have been a part of Gear Up 2.0 as well as 3.0, you probably know that mentoring is a department, as a U.S. Department of Education requirement for all Gear Up grants. So it's been a requirement since the beginning of Gear Up 2.0. It was a requirement for Gear Up 1.0. But at the same time, I would just be really honest and say that I feel like from the state's perspective, it's not something that we have done really well. I just realized I wasn't sharing my video either, so I apologize. Now I just turned it on. I realized that it was not something that we were providing you all with the resources to be able to do great mentoring, the type of mentoring that CCREC and NCEP and the department really expects, the type of mentoring that Shantae will kind of define as she goes through this. So I felt like this has been something for several years that we needed to beef up. So by saying that, I think we have several sites that have done a spectacular job with mentoring over the years and kind of figured it out. And we've also had many sites that have just really struggled with it. It is something that is really hard. It's hard to be really effective at. The other thing that I wanted to mention is I feel like as some of you have figured it out, part of what you have used is I'm going to let all my faculty become mentors. I'm going to let, like some of you have a program like called Advisory or Homerooms or something like that, and they're going to do college access mentoring during that time, which first of all, I'll say is absolutely wonderful. Please keep doing that. I think that's important that they get that type of regular guidance from somebody. But at the same time, often that's 20 or 30 students in a classroom that they're being the mentor for. And that is also different than what you'll hear Shantae describe as the comprehensive relationship building mentoring that we would like to seek. So what I would like to see us do, and again, like a lot of things we do it when Gear Up, mentoring is a requirement, but what you do and how you do it and what works for you, you will decide. But what I want you to think about as she's going through some of this is not how can I do this with 100% of my students. So for many of you, that would be 100 or 200 or 300 or 400 kids in your cohort. But how can you do this comprehensive mentoring with 10 to 15% of your students? So for most of you, that would be 10, 20, probably 30 students at the most. How could you develop some sort of mentoring program like this? And as you think about who are these students, and Shantae will go into this a little bit, but as you think about who are these students that I'm going to mentor this way, and we've talked about this numerous times since this grant started, but when we want to change our college going rate, when we want to look at the end of this grant and say, where did we make the greatest impact? We know that we have a great number of our students that are going on to college. We're helping them in so many different ways with their FAFSAs and colleges applications, find the right schools to go to, choose their career, choose their college majors, visiting different schools, doing career assessments, improving their ACT scores. But we have a large group of our students that we're working with that are already going to go to college, honestly, whether we were here or not. We're helping with kind of fine-tune those things and helping them fine-tune being successful in their school. As you're thinking about this type of mentoring program, think about those groups of students that without Gear Up probably would not go to school, would not go on to college and post-secondary education. Those might be your students that have the 2.0 to 3.0 GPAs, those who miss more days of school, those who have an ACT score of say a 15 to 18, those who they just really aren't really sure what they want to do after they graduate high school, those who don't have the belief or confidence in themselves that college is for them, their first generation, so they don't have that support at home. Just those people that maybe you know that they have the family life that is really encouraging them, but if they had someone that was right there walking along the way, this would make a huge difference in their life. So that's the first thing I really wanted to focus on here. The second thing, and I'll be faster with some of the others, I promise, is think about if she's going through this, hiring a mentoring coordinator for your site. As Shantae and Elvin and Debbie and I have been working on this for the last 5 or 6 weeks, this is going to be a very challenging year for you. I don't have to tell you that. You know that very well. At the same time, if you look through all your requirements, it's always a lot on your plate. So one of the thoughts that we had is if this would just be something to do it this well, you could just pass off to someone else. Our thought was that it could be a former teacher or retired teacher or counselor or something like that. You may have other people in mind, but this would be the person that you would work with, and you would just kind of give them this toolkit, these training materials. They would work with you and identify the students. They would identify the mentors, and then they would really implement and evaluate the program. They would be the ones to keep in contact with mentors and the students, and that way it's not something else that you had been spending an enormous amount of time on. I think over the years that has been part of the challenge to mentoring, that it just takes a lot of time to do it well. So I would ask you to consider hiring someone to be a mentoring coordinator. My thought was this could be someone that you could just pay like an annual stipend to. Ballpark, I was thinking $3,000 to $6,000 a year. But this is going to depend and vary per school system and school, how many students you have, how many mentors you're going to have, how many hours a week that you would need them to work, and that sort of thing. But think about that. The next thing is, what some people have used as their mentors is using senior students with your cohort group, which is great. But I also want you to think about something that you wouldn't have to necessarily recreate every year. I think a lot of these students that you may select are probably going to need a mentor every single year. And they may not. Part of this process may be that you'll have some students that you'll evaluate every year, and that was a one-time thing. They're kind of, now they are that 3.5 students that's coming to school every day. Things are going well. They've decided what their career is going to be and their college is going to be, and they've kind of moved in different situation. But I would ask you to think about something that would be easy for you to replicate, not only each year of this grant, but something that would be easy to replicate even after the grant is over. So again, Shantae is going to talk about some different ways to do that as well. I've already talked about the next one, looking at 10 to 15% of your cohorts. I've looked at some of the numbers from your schools, and for many of you, that means 10 to 20 students, 25 students or something like that, as you identify these ones. The last part, and we talked about this in so many ways of things that we do with Gear Up, our goal is always to provide you with lots of resources and templates and forms and things like that. But then what you will do is figure out what works for you. So I know that there's going to be part of what Shantae is going to share that you will just look at and say, this won't work here. And that's okay. Figure out what will work and how you can make it work for you. And you know that we will be as flexible and understanding because we want you to succeed. We want you to make the impact with those students that are in that middle range, that without something extra, something special, they may not go to school. And I think that's where Gear Up thrives. I think that's our space, is working with those types of kids. So with that, I'm finally finished, and Shantae, it's yours.
All right. Thank you, Duane. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining the Mentoring Toolkit webinar. I'm really excited to share this resource with you all in hopes that it'll help you create and implement a mentoring program that is right for your school. If you do have any questions, just for the sake of getting through the material, if you could just use the chat feature, and then at the end, we'll save time for questions. If there's anything that I don't get to, you can definitely email me those questions as well. So the agenda for today, we'll just do an introduction. What is mentoring? Why is it important? We'll talk about the steps for successful implementation, which is kind of the meat and bones of the toolkit. We'll look at some training resources, mentoring guides, which are more resources and activities and questions for mentors and their mentees. And then we'll look at handouts and forms and some additional resources. So before jumping in, I just wanted to talk about a couple of the sources used for this toolkit. The one on the left, the How to Build a Successful Mentoring Program Using the Elements of Effective Practice. I have been calling this the Mentoring Bible. If I refer to it again, it is the Mentoring Bible. A lot of what I've mentioned in this toolkit comes from this resource. It's a free resource offered by the National Mentoring Partnership. It is very comprehensive. It has a lot of things like checklists and timelines. So I definitely recommend, if there's anything that I mentioned in this toolkit that you want more information on, definitely look at this resource. The National Mentoring Partnership, again, that's where the Mentoring Bible is from, but it also has a plethora of resources for all stages of your mentoring program. So it's a really great tool as well. Arizona Gear Up, they have an academic mentoring toolkit, which I kind of molded what our toolkit looks like from there. They also have some really great training resources we'll talk about. And then a lot of the forms that were adapted for Gear Up Tennessee came from Gear Up Washington State. So we'll be looking at some of those as well. So about the toolkit, this toolkit provides information and resources to develop and support successful implementation of a robust college-focused mentoring program to serve Gear Up Tennessee cohort students. And the idea of this toolkit is to make it something that can be used every year with the cohort, so it will be updated to make sure questions are still relevant and to make sure that the information are relevant for the cohort grade. So what is mentoring? So the National Mentoring Partnership defines mentoring as a structured and trusting relationship that brings young people together with caring individuals who offer guidance, support, encouragement aimed at developing the competence and character of the mentee. Specifically for Gear Up, CCREC defines comprehensive mentoring as services provided for when Gear Up staff, teachers, or other school staff identify students who would benefit from an ongoing supportive relationship with a trained, caring adult or older student. Mentors meet regularly with their assigned students. Meetings may be on or off campus and either during or outside the school day. Typically, issues addressed during mentoring meetings include academic, social, organization, or life skill development. So as Duane said, this is like everything that you could do with mentoring. So again, it's kind of picking and choosing what works best for your school. So we'll talk about a couple of the types of mentoring, and then again, just coming up with a plan that fits your school best. So why is mentoring important? These are a couple of quotes. So research shows that mentoring has a positive effect on a range of student outcomes, including grade promotion, absenteeism, academic goal achievement, school connection, college aspirations, and post-secondary transition and success. So this just shows that mentoring not only helps students while they're in K-12, but also beyond. So just some really great notes. And then the next three quotes, those come from The Mentoring Effect, which is a publication from the National Mentoring Partnership, which is also a really good read if you just want to read some really great outcome statistics about mentoring programs. So at-risk youth are also much less likely to report having had a naturally occurring mentoring relationship. As we all know, a lot of students can fly under the radar. They either don't know about a resource to seek it out, or they think a resource doesn't apply to them. So again, that's just being intentional about the students that you're targeting and giving them the opportunity that they may not have had otherwise. And then also going to the college-going culture, which is one of the goals of Gear Up, is more than 3/4 of at-risk young adults who had a mentor aspire to enroll and graduate from college versus half of at-risk young adults who had no mentor. So again, in these students, you can see more students who had a mentor are more likely to say that they're going to college or they're going to complete a degree. And then those actually enrolled at-risk young adults with mentors are more likely to be enrolled in college than those without a mentor. And you can see the statistics there. So students that do have an adult are more likely, who have a mentor are more likely to enroll in college. So those are just a few outcomes that have been found in that resource. So types of mentoring, we have traditional mentoring, which is one adult to one young person, group mentoring, which is one adult to up to 4 young people, team mentoring, which is several adults working with small groups of young people, peer mentoring, which is caring youth mentoring other youth, and e-mentoring, which is mentoring via email and the internet. So in the times that we live in, you might be doing either most or all e-mentoring. It might be a combination of e-mentoring and any of these others. And e-mentoring has the same idea as any other type of mentoring. Is just going to be done through a different platform. So if that's via text or via phone calls or via email or FaceTime or Google Hangout, however that's going to look, it's still the same, but just through a different platform. And so that might be a combination within any of these above 4 types of mentoring. There is a supplement that I've linked in the toolkit. It's an e-mentoring supplement to the elements of effective practice. And so that has a lot more information about e-mentoring, but it'll be kind of the same thing that you're kind of doing with your other virtual services. It'll just be virtual. So we will jump into the steps for successful implementation. So the 3 stages I have listed here are program design and planning. So this is where you map out your entire program from start to finish. We'll then look at program operations, and then lastly, program evaluation. So program design and planning, the first step is a needs assessment. So this is where you're going to identify which students you want to target for mentoring. So deciding what characteristics these students have, if it's going to come from data, if it's coming from teacher or staff recommendations. It's just starting with how many and which students you do want to target for mentoring. And once you have those students, what do you actually want to accomplish? That's step 2. So what is the desired outcome of your mentoring program? Is it to have students have better attendance, or have these students have better grades or better behavior in the classroom? So again, just deciding what, after you've chosen these students, what actually do you want to accomplish through your mentoring program? Step 3 is determining the type of mentoring program. So that goes to the previous slide. So is this going to be traditional mentoring? Again, it might look very different this academic year. Or is it going to be a mix of traditional and e-mentoring? Is it going to be group mentoring? So again, just kind of figuring out what works best with your school. And then step 4, determine the nature of the mentoring session. So the 3 listed here, the first, character, social, and leadership development, that really focuses on building those relationships. So there's not a set goal that you need to accomplish. It's just really kind of building that relationship with between the mentor and the mentee. And then you have school to career, which is exactly as it sounds. It focuses on career exploration, job and life skills. It focuses on even post-secondary options. So having those conversations, and then academic success. And Gear Up Arizona actually is more of a model for the academic success, which combines kind of that character mentoring, but also adds tutoring to it. So it's focusing on things like homework assistance and tutoring. So you can do one of these, you can do a combination of these, just again, depending on what your desired outcome and what you want to happen with your program. And then step 5 is the type of mentor. So to identify who you want to mentor, who you want to recruit as your mentors. Are these college students? Are these going to be older students like seniors? Are they going to be teachers and staff, or community volunteers? So again, kind of looking to see who you actually like to be mentors within your program. And then step 6, these are, again, just getting the planning out. So when mentoring will take place. So for the school-based mentoring, that would be, would it be during school? Would it be after school? If it's e-mentoring, you have a lot more flexibility with e-mentoring in terms of when things can take place. So again, depending on the type of mentoring that you plan to pursue, determining when that mentoring will actually take place. And then step 7 is determine how often mentors and mentees will meet and how long mentoring matches should endure. So for Gear Up, mentors, it's recommended that mentors meet with their mentees at least once a month. Determining the duration of that, again, is going to be up to you. And then how long the mentoring matches should endure. So I've seen some programs that their mentors make a commitment to match with the student for like 3 years. It might be a semester, it might be a whole academic year, it might be a calendar year. One thing I'll note here, so for example, if you are using seniors, just know that seniors are very busy. So just knowing that they may not be able to commit to a full semester, or full year, it might be a semester. Same with college students, because their schedules are so flexible and so fluid. Just knowing, being realistic about how long these matches can actually endure. And then step 8, determine where the mentoring matches will meet. So again, if this is school-based, obviously it would be at the school. Community-based, that's places like parks or museums. And then e-mentoring, again, you have a lot more flexibility with e-mentoring in terms of where you can meet. There's also agency-based, so things like boys and girls clubs. And again, this academic year might be a little different depending on what is actually open and available to students. Step 9 is identify your program stakeholders and determine how you will promote your program. So your stakeholders, those are going to be parents. Those are going to be the mentors and the mentees themselves. That's going to be your teachers, your staff. How will you promote the program to them? Is it going to be in a newsletter? Is it going to be a church bulletin? Is it going to be social media? So again, identifying who you want to reach out to and promote the program to and sell the program to, and then how you will do that. And then the last step is evaluation. So developing a plan at the front end of how you're going to measure the program processes. How are you going to measure those outcomes, so those desired outcomes that you listed in step 2? How are you actually going to measure those outcomes? And then once you do get those outcomes, how are you going to reflect and disseminate those evaluation findings? So finding a way to share that information out, and then also creating a feedback loop for improvement for the future. Next, we'll move to program operations. So this is actually hitting the ground and going out. So the first step is recruiting and selecting mentors. What you'll want to do is develop and write a mentor position description. So this is different than the mentoring coordinator position that we'll talk about. This is for the actual mentor. So develop that position description. I do have a form from Garrett, Washington that has some of the qualities and responsibilities of mentors. So that's something that you can kind of tweak for your own site. And then select sources of mentors. So if there's already a mentoring organization or an agency, definitely try to partner with them or try to reach out to them to see if that's a source where you could find mentors. If there's a large company or even a college nearby, like reaching out to those sources of mentors. If there's any kind of faith-based communities or churches that you want to reach out to. So really kind of looking around your community and seeing what resources you actually might have to reach out to for potential mentors. And then select mentors who support the mission of your program. So this is finding people who really understand the need for mentoring and understand that they can make a difference and that they do support that mentoring does have a positive effect on students. So really kind of finding those mentors who do support that mission. And then use existing research to determine who is likely to mentor. So the mentoring Bible, as I will refer to it, has a lot more information about some of the research that's already been found, but some examples are like, women are more likely to mentor than men. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're looking for mentors. Or college students, they are very likely to mentor, but their relationships are less stable because their schedules are less stable. So that's just something to consider when you're looking for mentors. And then emphasize the benefits of mentoring. And that's not just for the mentees themselves, that's for the mentors. So a lot of mentors have reported really enjoying having that feeling of responsibility. They felt more satisfied in their own employment, their own jobs due to mentoring. They really liked feeling that they were part of their community and helping out. So emphasize the benefits to the mentors themselves of why they would want to mentor. And those last two bullet points kind of go together, but that goes again to what I mentioned earlier about marketing the program. So marketing the program, is that going to be in a community or a school newsletter? Is that going to be on social media? Again, that's a church bulletin. And there's also information sessions. So you can use information sessions to recruit potential mentors as a way to market the program. And then step 2 is it reads very much like a regular job application process. So require a written application. And that's just so you have control over the questions you ask and also can elicit the responses that you want. And you'll also have something to look at and to refer back to. So require a written application, conduct background checks, conduct character reference checks, and face-to-face interviews. So again, very much similar to a job application process. And then step 3, orient and train mentors. So we're focusing on training mentors, and so there's more information coming up about some training resources. Orientation, some mentoring programs do have an orientation, and this usually takes place before mentors have been selected. So it's kind of part of that information session, kind of that recruiting piece, just to let people really know what mentoring is. So again, if that's something that you're interested in, I do have resources that talk a little bit about the difference between orientation and training, the pros and cons of doing one or the other. And again, this toolkit focuses more on training. So we'll go into that in a later slide. And then step 4, match mentors and mentees. So once you've selected your mentors, you can use established criteria such as personal preference, temperament, life experience, and interest, and race. And there's a plethora of additional criteria that you can match mentors and mentees on. But use those to match your mentors and your mentees together, and then arrange an introduction. So don't just leave them and say, here's your mentor, but actually arrange some type of introduction between mentors and mentees just to kind of ease that ease that relationship in. And then step 5, provide ongoing support, supervision, and monitoring of mentoring relationships. So offer ongoing training opportunities for program participants, communicate regularly with program participants, help mentors and mentees define next steps for achieving mentee goals, bring mentors together to share ideas and support. And this one's really important. It's about sharing best practices. So if you have a mentor that's doing really well, having some type of system where they can share what they're doing with other mentors. And again, it's not going to work for every student because every student is different, but actually having something where they can talk about what they're doing and what they're doing well, as well as if mentors are having some type of issue and they're all having that issue, being able to come together and kind of brainstorm and offer solutions for each other. So really kind of creating a community and a system within those mentors. And then establish a process to manage grievances, resolve issues, and offer positive feedback. That's really important to make sure that the mentor knows who they can go to if they do have any issues with their mentoring relationship. And then assist mentors and mentees whose relationship is not working out. So of course, there's going to be matches that are not perfect. So just having a system in place where students can either be rematched with another mentor if it doesn't work out. And then assure appropriate documentation is done on a regular basis. So for you all specifically, just make sure that you are adding this to your map and car on a regular basis, and then also entering it into Compass on a regular basis, any of those mentoring meetings. And the last stage is program evaluation. So there are 2 types of evaluation: there's process evaluations and outcome evaluations. Process focuses on whether a program is being implemented as intended, how it is being experienced, and whether changes are needed to address any problem. So this really focuses kind of on the surface. This focuses on the nuts and bolts of the process. So these are: how many matches do you have? What types of activities are your mentors and mentees participating on? How long are these matches lasting? What's the frequency and durations? And then what are the perceptions of the relationship for both the mentor and the mentees? So again, really kind of the nuts and bolts, just making sure that the pieces of the mentoring program are there and they're working appropriately. And the outcome evaluation. So this goes to, again, just measuring those desired outcomes that you listed in the steps in the first design and planning stage. So this is like getting reports of the mentees' grades, their behavior, their psychological functioning, teachers' reports of mentees' classroom behavior, mentors' reports of their well-being, parent and child relationships, and then high school graduation rates, which would be a little further down the road. But really, these are going to be like based on your mentee logs. These are going to be based on surveys as well. And so really kind of trying to see if anything has changed in terms of these areas for the mentee. So did the program actually have any effects? So all of these 3 stages that I mentioned, so the design and planning, the operations, and the evaluation stage, the Mentoring Bible goes into this in way more depth. So if you have any questions or want more information about any of these stages, the other toolkit also has checklists, so you can kind of go through and checklist what I've done, and then also some more examples of evaluations. So again, it's a really great resource. So I do definitely recommend checking that out. So we will now move into mentor training. And so this is mentor training topics. As you can see, it is a very comprehensive list. This is from the Elements of Effective Practice. And this is literally everything that they could think of that you could possibly train a mentor on. So this is not going to be relevant. Not all of these are going to be relevant to your program. So I definitely don't want you to feel overwhelmed by the number of bullet points or the training topics here. Just kind of look at it. And then again, this is in the toolkit as well. Look at it and see like which training topics would you think is most important for your program and selecting those. So don't think that this is something that you have to check off and do all of these, because not all of them are going to be relevant. But I just wanted to share that with you all. And next we will look at some mentor training resources. So I've got 4 here. We'll look at the first 2 first. So I have been calling Weber State Webster State. I think it's Webster State in your toolkit, so I will fix that. And I just learned yesterday that it's actually Weber State. So Gear Up Arizona and Weber State, they actually have training modules. And so we'll look at Gear Up Arizona first. So let me pull that up. Okay. So this is Gear Up Arizona, and as I mentioned earlier, they do academic mentoring. So that's a little different from our comprehensive mentoring in that it does include tutoring. So they have that academic component along with kind of that relationship building component. And so these are the areas that they chose to mentor their or train their mentors on. So professionalism, ethics and FERPA, and cultural competency and pre-college knowledge. So these modules actually came from Weber State. They were adapted for Gear Up Arizona. And then I will show you the pre-college knowledge one just so you can get an idea of what those slides look like. So this, you can see it's an editable, customizable PowerPoint. And so it just has information. Again, this is going to be specific to Gear Up Arizona. But this is definitely something that you can use. You can use the same information within this and kind of model it for your specific program and things that you want to train your mentors on. So this is, again, customizable, and it's just a nice template to have with some really great information. So again, this one focuses on pre-college knowledge, but there's also, like, it showed ethics and FERPA, professionalism. But I just wanted you to see that this is customizable if you wanted to use this as a training module template. And then we'll look at Weber State. So this is Weber State, and so this is where Gear Up Arizona did get these modules. So if you scroll down just here, now these modules, the only difference is that they are not customizable. They are in PDF format, but you can definitely use the same information. So they have, this is what Gear Up Arizona used, so their professionalism, cultural sensitivity, but they do have several modules as well. And again, these are going to be geared towards Weber State. But again, it's something that you can kind of use as a model for your own. And then if you want to look at so this is their mentoring module. So you can see it looks very similar to, again, it was just adapted for Gear Up Arizona. But a lot of the information is really good to use. If you wanted to use the same information, you can just do the same thing that Arizona did and just say adapted from Weber State. But again, just having something to start with, I think using those customizable PowerPoints from Gear Up Arizona, and then customizing with the information and the training that you want to supply your mentors. And then the next two resources are from the National Mentoring Center, so Training New Mentors. And so this, what I really like about this resource is that it has actual training curriculum. So I'm going to scroll through and show you that. But there's some really great things. It talks also about the difference between orientation and training. And then it does have a sample mentor training, so it has an actual agenda, but it starts with part 1, program overview and introduction to mentoring, working effectively with your mentee, which is part 2. So let me see if I can find that example. There you go. So it has a mentor training agenda, which I think is a really great kind of template, again, for how to structure your training and kind of what to include. So this is the part 1. It has icebreakers, role of mentors, about how long the program should be. And then each of these is broken down to actual activities. So you can use these same worksheets. It tells you what materials are needed, about how long it needs to be, things that you need to supply. So it really does give you kind of all the information you need to kind of set up your own training. So I thought this is really good, just kind of having a template, a sample curriculum. So that is a resource that is linked. And then once mentors have been in the program, if things come up, because there's going to be things that weren't included in the initial training, so things that mentors might need more information on or additional training on. And so that is this ongoing training for mentors here. And so this is developed by the U.S. Department of Education, as well as the National Mentoring Resource Center. And I'll just show you the table of contents here. get to that. Here we go. So these are just some of the topics on the training sessions, and very much like that previous training new mentors document, they have, again, everything that you need to train on these areas. So it has like leading questions for mentors, conversation points, and really good. It's just so you're not starting from scratch and making your training materials and your curriculum from scratch. These are really great places to start. But things like how to support your mentee when he or she is facing bully, goal setting, working with the mentee's family. So again, really great information that might come up for your mentors for ongoing training. So I am sure that there are other mentoring trainings out there, but these three, like I said, I think are really great kind of comprehensive ways to get started. Really great examples to create that training curriculum. And then next we'll talk about mentoring guides, and I'll kind of try to zoom through these next ones. So this is just for mentors, and this can be used for recruiting. So like, what are some really great qualities of a mentor? This can also be used just for a reminder for your mentors, like what's good qualities to have. So things like mentors listen, of course. Mentors criticize constructively, they're supportive. So just kind of having this little piece of what actually makes a good mentor. And then we'll go through a couple of these. So these are some mentoring guides, and these focus on resources and activities. So I think let's look at the handbook, because that one might be. Okay. So this is a mentoring handbook. That is the second bullet point, the College and Career Academy Support Network 10th grade mentoring handbook. So this is from a high school in California, and it includes, this was given to them during their orientation, but it is basically just a handbook for their mentor. They also have handbooks for their mentees, so that if that's something you're interested in, that's also linked. But this is really cool just as again, using as a template or as an idea for creating a handbook that's for your students. For your mentors. So again, this was more of an orientation program, so they have their orientation agenda, but it also just kind of starts with information about the school. So having your school contact information, what is it they're doing, like their school-based mentoring, like what's the period, the bell schedule, having information about who your mentees are. This program actually did group mentoring, so they had one adult to 3 to 4. They had 3 or 4 mentees. So they had some information about each of their students, their parents' information, their birthdays. They had a map of the school, so I thought that was pretty neat. And then it just kind of talks about the mentoring program and overview. So again, a really great template for just creating a handout. It talks about the benefits to mentors. So as I mentioned, like they are more satisfied when they turn to their workplace. They have a really great sense of responsibility. So really kind of getting into that kind of introductory. But it does have, scroll down just a bit, some mentoring materials. So their program is a lot more structured. So again, just depending on how you want to do your program, you can follow this kind of model, or kind of you'd leave it unstructured just based on your conversations with students. But this one, so you can see that each meeting is already planned out, the times, the dates. They have exactly what they're going to talk about at each meeting. So again, this is very structured, or it can be, again, more unstructured, just depending on what your mentoring program, what you would like it to look like. But I just wanted to show you this handbook as a good kind of model. And then I'll just briefly mention the other 2 guides. So the Take Stock in Children, that is a foundation, a nonprofit foundation in Florida, and it is a toolkit as well, and it kind of focuses on like 4 different areas. So building that relationship, it focuses on career exploration, it focuses on college, and it has like also a roadmap for students. And then this toolkit has several activities so that have to do with those. So I'll let you guys look at those kind of individually, but it's a really great toolkit and having actual activities that you can do with students that can be modified with your program. So that is a really great tool. And in the National Mentoring Center, they're building new relationship, a guide for new mentors. Very much the same. It has some really great guiding questions for mentors to kind of, again, establish that relationship with their students. And then we'll go over the handouts and forms. So you should have a separate document for all the handouts and forms. So if you can't see any of these that I go through, you do have a copy of those. So the first we'll look at is the mentor coordinator sample job description. Duane did a great job in putting together a job description for the mentor coordinator. So this is who you're hiring to basically do everything in the toolkit. And so we'll look at that. And then most, if not all of the forms I've adapted from Garrett, Washington. They had some really great forms. And so we'll look at those as well. So again, if you can't see this, then just know you do have a copy of it. But the first page just starts off talking about what is Garrett, what is comprehensive mentoring, and then specifically comprehensive mentoring as a Garrett, Tennessee required service. And then going into some key responsibilities and preferred qualifications. So again, very much like a normal job description, but something that you'll use to select and hire your mentor coordinator. And then this is again from Garrett, Washington. This is the mentor. I won't call it a job description. It just has some of the qualifications and responsibilities that you would hope to find in a mentor. So something you can use to create a job description. So that is from Garrett, Washington. And then I have two types of applications. This is the adult volunteer application. So this is when you, again, it's good to have an actual application when you're looking for mentors. So this is the adult volunteer application. So it asks questions like what education you've completed, why do you want to, what motivated you to apply to the program. And then the second page also includes areas for listing those character references that you'll check into. And then this one is for peer mentors. So if you're using older students to mentor your cohort, some of the same questions. So why do you want to be a part of this? And then also, of course, just making sure they're getting that parental consent. And then the mentor interview form. And so this can be used. I think this one is more geared towards the adult, because describing yourself as a teenager. Most peers are still teenagers. So again, just kind of tweaking that mentor interview form. I believe this is 2 pages. And again, just depending on how you want to structure your program, if it's going to be group mentoring or if it's going to be traditional, how many students do you wish to mentor? So you can change that number if it's going to be 1 or if it's going to be 3 to 4, adding those as well. And then this is the match profile worksheet. So again, matching mentors and mentees on some type of criteria. And there's just a couple listed here, but again, there's a lot more criteria that you can match your mentees on, so that can be adapted as well. But again, having something in hand that you could show how this mentor match was made. And then of course, if you need to rematch, having that on hand to see what those characteristics that you chose were. And then lastly is the meeting log. So this is whenever your mentors are meeting with their mentees. There's a checkbox where you can check what was discussed or the topic of what was discussed, the date of each meeting, the length of each meeting, and then the notes for what occurred during this meeting, and then also notes for the next meeting. So those are all the forms. And then I have a list of additional resources. Again, we won't go through many of these. But the one I will highlight for the millionth time is that 5th one down, which is the how to build a successful mentoring program using the elements of effective practice. Again, it is a really great resource. It goes into, again, much more detail than what I've got here. So if you really want some really great information about how to do things and kind of having that checkbox, those checklists, definitely check that out. There's more mentoring activities. So that last one, taking stock in children, there's 110 mentoring activities. So that's a great guide. But these are all really great resources that I definitely recommend checking out. And I think that is all I have. So just a little under the wire. So I will just leave this time for questions. Is there anything in the chat?
Can I just add one comment as y'all are thinking of questions and stuff like that, and then feel free to ask questions to to me or Shantae, either one. So I think it was about 4 to 6 weeks ago that Shantae got started on the toolkit for mentoring. And I asked her to create a very comprehensive toolkit that would contain everything that our site coordinators could possibly need. And she worked several weeks and would provide kind of updates and ideas and things like that to several of us. We would provide feedback. She would go back and retool it. And then I guess it was about 2 weeks ago now, we saw the final toolkit, and then she put together this PowerPoint with it. And after asking her to put together a toolkit that had everything, my response was like, wow, that's a lot. So if I'm you all right now, site coordinators, and hearing all this, I'd be like, that's a lot to think about. This is one of my 10 pages of requirements. I wish I could do that much with mentoring, but I can't. So I would ask you to think about a couple of things. One is, if you have a wonderful mentoring program that you absolutely love and you don't want to change anything, okay. If you have a mentoring program and you saw a few things in here that you can use, but you're going to kind of keep doing what you're doing, that's okay too. But I also know that we have sites that we, and I was a part of this as a regional coordinator, we've just kind of always struggled with mentoring, and I don't feel like maybe in a site we've always done things really well here. I think this is a great opportunity to do that. Again, I think about that if you tried to think about how could I do this with 200 or 300 kids, I don't think it's possible. But is it possible with 10 kids or 20 kids or 30 kids? And to many of you, 10 or 20 or 30 kids, that's the difference. That's the increase in college going rate that your grant over the 7-year period is going to have. We're looking at about a 10 to 15% increase. And I feel like that will be a lot of these students that need this type of mentoring. So don't think about it with hundreds of kids. Think about it with that small number of students. And the other thing is, and I know some of you are so hands-on, it's been hard to do that right now, but are so hands-on that hiring a mentoring coordinator is not something you want to do. That's okay. But probably if I were in your shoes, I wanted to do this with, say, 25 or 30 kids, hiring a mentoring coordinator, either from my school system or from the community or something like that, that I could tell them exactly what I wanted, give them this mentoring toolkit, and say, you go do this. To me, that's the only way I would feel like as a site coordinator, I could do this well, because you've got so many other things that you do. So with that, I'll turn it over to questions, and I know Shantae would be happy to answer any as well.
Yeah. So feel free to use the chat, and I think you should be able to unmute yourselves if you can, if you do have any questions.
If not questions, just tell me what your thoughts are right now. And if part of your thoughts are, this is overwhelming, I need to think about it, that's okay too. But tell me what you're thinking.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Melissa.
Well, I was thinking, we're in that group of people that we've had a teacher advisory program since like 2010. So it's something that, we've been working on and come a long way with it. It's still not where I want it to be, but it's something we've come a long way with over the years. I joke that, we're on like the 20-year plan to success, and one day we'll write a book about it. But I was thinking, just as we were listening to this, that I could really see it something that we implement with a very small group of students this year, and then maybe expand as the future goes on. But I think it's something that's very useful, and especially for those at-risk students who are maybe they're on the bubble, maybe they are college material, but maybe they don't see themselves as college material. Working with teachers and administrators to identify those students, and working with that small group of students starting out, that might be something that we could use this for this year.
Oh, great thought, and I agree. You're right. Thank you.
I found mentoring, of course, to be one of the most difficult things to do with the program due to schedules, adults' schedules, and everything. So I appreciate all the work that Shantae went through, and I'm going to be looking through that toolkit very good, and hopefully we can increase our mentoring this year. So I do appreciate it.
Thank you, Jackie. Yeah, as you look through the toolkit, I know you haven't had a lot of time, any of you haven't had a lot of time yet, but when you spend some time looking through the toolkit, you really will appreciate the time that Shantae has put into this and put everything you could think of that either you or a mentoring coordinator would need. That was our goal. As I've said several times, it is with all of our resources that you have to do less work as a site coordinator of finding forms and resources and things like that, that you're able to implement things. So again, thank you, Shantae, for doing all this. Other thoughts or considerations or questions or a best practice with mentoring that any of you would want to share that maybe Shantae has not touched upon?
Mhm.
I think that the electronic mentoring, whatever you all call it in your district, is going to be very helpful this year, especially as we look at students who are doing our Haywood homeschool. And I think that's going to be needed so they can have more social interaction as well as some guidance, to help them get through this year. It's not going to be easy.
Great point. Yeah, just about everything that we're doing this year, there's going to have to be a virtual aspect of it too. And I don't really care for virtual anything, probably like most of you don't, because the ideal world is that we get to see our kids, we get to see our families, get to see our parents. But I think probably every single one of you, you're going to have a group of kids at least, if not all of them at times, that are not going to be in the school building. And we've got to figure out, and sometimes, and I think it was Melissa that you pointed out this yesterday, I don't know this will be a case across the board, but I think sometimes it may be our most at-risk kids that will choose to be the ones staying at home instead of going to school. And it would be, in a sense, it would be easy for us to leave them behind and focus on those that are coming to school. So we've got to very intentionally not do that. But great point, Jackie. Anything else? Most of y'all have been very, very silent. I know you've got a lot on your plates and lots of things you're thinking about.
This is a question from Monica. It says, what are your thoughts on reaching students that do not have internet access if and when we go completely online?
So my first response, and Shantae, you can answer this too based upon research that you've seen. I think this is going to be the case even for some of our students that do have the internet access, is to pick up the phone and call them.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we have some, I mean, you can call a student for mentoring just like we can use internet access and be able to see them and do the video portion. I think we'll have a lot of kids that they're going to get a lot of online programming, and sometimes it will mean more to them and chat and text and things like that and emails. I think sometimes it's going to mean more to students that we connect with them actually talking to them on a phone than it will some of the other programs and things like that too. So I just think we have to look at everything.
That was my initial thought too, is like without internet, most likely phone mentoring, phone counseling, going along those lines. Texting, so I know texting isn't always ideal, but I mean, it's usually a lot more flexible. Students are used to texting. So just really kind of having to use another resource there.